and welcome. My name is Rashi Mogha and I'm your host for this Empowered Women of the World podcast. This podcast is for you, it is for me, and it is for all women who want to take charge of their career and happiness. In this weekly podcast, we'll talk about technology, we'll talk about leadership, and we will talk about mindfulness. We will talk about how you can discover, visualize, and actualize your success, whatever that means to you. We will also talk about our common opponent, the conscious and unconscious bias which we deal with on daily basis. And we'll share ways to navigate work politics. At the end of each podcast, I will share with you a tip or a free resource that you can use to be successful. It's going to be a fun ride, so hop on and join me on this journey every week. Today, we'll be demystifying the cloud for you. It is one of the most requested topics by our audience, and not because that there is lack of information on internet about cloud, but because cloud computing means different things to different people. There are numerous definitions and a variety of information floating around on cloud computing, so it's important to understand the context in which the cloud computing term is being used. And because cloud computing is a vast topic, we're going to demystify it in a series of podcasts. But today, let's cover the basics. What is cloud computing and what are the three primary layers of cloud computing? So in simplest terms, instead of all computer hardware and software that you are using sitting somewhere in your company's network, if it's provided to you as a service by another company and accessed over internet, usually in a seamless way, that's cloud computing. Cloud computing is, in a way, an on-demand delivery of computer resources like storage, compute, or CPU power as some people call it, networking resources, database, and applications. And this delivery is by a cloud services vendor with a pay for what you consume kind of pricing. That's essentially cloud computing. So now that we have talked about cloud computing, let's see how it maps to an on-prem environment. So in an on-prem environment, essentially, you have a networking layer, you have storage, you have some servers sitting, there might be some kind of virtualization that would happen, there would be an operating system on top of it, there would be a middleware component, a runtime environment, there would be some kind of data, and then applications. So all these would be the components in your on-prem environment. And in the world of cloud computing, all these components of an on-prem world are essentially provided as services by a cloud vendor via internet. So now that we have defined cloud computing, let's talk about the layers of cloud computing. Let's start with the foundational layer, which is called Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS. Now, this is the foundational layer, as I mentioned. It's the basic building block for your cloud. It includes compute power or CPUs, storage, and essentially networking. As a consumer, Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS layer, provides you with the highest level of flexibility and management control over your IT resources, and it basically maps to the infrastructure of your on-prem environment. So next time when you hear about terms like CPUs, GPUs, file and object storage, and networking in the cloud computing context, you should know that it is the IaaS layer that's being referred to. The next layer, or the layer on top of IaaS, is Platform as a Service, or PaaS layer. When you talk about Platform as a Service, you're essentially talking about the middleware and the runtime environment being made available to you as cloud services. Now, PaaS essentially removes the need for managing any kind of underlying infrastructure, which is usually hardware and operating systems, and basically allows you to focus on development, deployment, and management of your applications. This helps you be more efficient as you don't need to worry about things like capacity planning. Now, developers usually, when they develop new applications, use PaaS cloud services. And then there's the topmost layer, which is the SaaS layer, or the software as a service layer. Now, software as a service basically is software that's made available to you over internet as a service. Now, SaaS offerings are run and managed by service providers, and in most cases, SaaS offerings are end-user applications. So, think about web emails, think about ERP or CRM solution that you access over the internet. Now, with a SaaS offering, you do not have to think about how the software is maintained, how it's going to be patched, and how the underlying infrastructure is being managed. You only need to think about how you will use that particular piece of software over the internet. So I hope this podcast helps set some context for cloud computing for you. And now when you hear about the IaaS, PaaS or SaaS layers, you know what those really mean. You should also by now know which layer or layers of cloud you use. So in the next podcast, we'll talk about why enterprises and startups are moving to cloud and some common myths associated with cloud computing, so that you have all the information when you walk into the conversations pertaining to cloud. And today's free resource for you is a link to free videos on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Services. These 5 to 7 minute videos are a great way to understand how to use OCI services. The link is in the show notes below, so check out these videos. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for loving, liking, sharing, and supporting the podcast. Remember, sharing is caring. I love your feedback, emails, and messages. Our audience is growing exponentially each week, and we have lots of requests for lots of new topics, which is awesome. I look forward to seeing you again in our next podcast. Till then, keep empowering the world.